right. First of all, what is history? We get our history mostly from written records. Persons who lived at the time wrote down records. Now, in the absence of written records, we'll sometimes resort to archaeology, that is, digging up old cities, digging up old artifacts, even resort to studying grave sites, finding out how these people buried their dead, and that tells us a lot about how they lived. But most of it's written records. Who lived at the time, wrote down, and I'll pick on Socrates right now. Socrates never wrote anything that we have a copy of. But his people who knew him, particularly Thucydides, Xenophon, and especially Plato, wrote about him. We consider what they wrote, because they knew about it, we consider those original, I'm not going to say original, I'm going to use the word primary sources. Persons who never met him but who wrote about him are called secondary. Secondary sources. I had primary sources, secondary sources. Now, of the primary sources, and I had some students this morning who didn't realize this, we hardly have a really true primary source. For instance, all the works we have about Socrates, Plato's works, Xenophon and Thucydides, are all copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. We do not have an original writing from Plato. It's all copy of a copy. And you often wonder, you know, like if we played the game of gossip and started out with a story on this side of the room, by the time it got back there, the story might be complete. Did each person, some people along the way would change it a little bit. Well, did the persons who copy it make some changes? However, in the case of one group of people, the Sumerians, I must write that. We have some true primary sources, because they did not write on paper. See, paper, or you write on leather, write on paper, it will decay, crumble up, become useless, and have to be copied. They wrote on clay tablets. The clay tablets were put in libraries, and the libraries were covered over and buried and stayed in what you might call a time capsule for some 3,000 or more years. And when you read them, you're reading true primary sources that are not, as far as I'm not, copies. True primary sources. Now, there's a problem though with the Sumerian. Hey, oh, we have so many Sumerian writings, and we have more Sumerian writings, and we have writings about Greece and Rome combined, more than we have about the early Middle Ages. There is one big problem with the Sumerians' original sources. And that problem is we don't believe a lot of what they said. What they said, if it doesn't shock you, it should. I'll be getting into it in a minute. But basically, primary source original, your textbook for the most part is a secondary source. In other words, the authors, now, later on, and if you take second semester history with these same authors, they will be writing about things that they themselves witnessed. They went to China one time and saw some women who had their feet bound. We'll talk about foot binding later on in the semester when we talk about China. But so the authors at some point become a little bit of a primary source, but that's late. But for the most part, at least this semester, they're considered a secondary source. All right, let me pause. Any one of you have any questions, comments? I should have done this before starting my lecture. Okay, yes?
For our paper, are we allowed to write like APA, or does it have to be like MLA?
I'm not strict about that. Here's why. I mean, I have to tell you this. I have not been to school in 39 years. And I do not know these formats. And some of the rules of grammar have changed. I finally bought an English textbook and studied it a little bit. But there's some things, though, that have not changed, like has did. Still not know. That hasn't changed from my time to this. But some rules have. I'm not particularly for it. But what I do say is 1,000 words not counting the title page and the bibliography. 1,000 words. The pages should be numbered. There should be again, a title page. And of course, basically the fundamental rules, double space, the paragraph should be indented. Check your spell checker. Yeah, I had a person spell Great Britain, G-R-A-T-E, throughout the paper, and the spell checker won't catch it. Spell checkers can do some really weird stuff. So you have to do your own spell checker. Spell checkers are great and wonderful, and they're here to stay, and someday they might get better. Hope that answers your question. Now, I have a lot more to say about the paper in the days ahead. Anything else? Okay, well, I want to say this about the test. I mean, I know you students are more concerned about the grade you're going to get than you are learning the material. I'm more concerned about learning the material than the grade. But anyway, that's the difference between me and you. But about the test, since I'm teaching 2 classes of the same course, you will not be asked the same questions that my first class. Now, I had a situation back in 2010 where I gave the same test, and the second class, they made about 26 out of 30 of them made A's. Now, I can't prove what I suspect. But so when I say this might be on the test, I don't know which questions. I mean, I'll make up about 65 questions, 66 questions, and give you 33 of them, and give them 33. And the ones you get will be the same ones they get.
So you make up your own questions?
Well, I make up my own test. Oh, yes. Yes, I do. And yeah, granted, I've taught this course about 20 times. I have a whole bunch of questions reserved, but this semester I'm going to be doing a whole lot different, writing up a whole lot of new questions, provided I get the time to. So, but again, I'll make about 60 questions, so a little bit more, 60, give you 30 of them, them 30. And it will not help you a bit to talk. I don't know if any of you know anyone in my other class or not. I don't care. It won't benefit you to know, talk to them. The questions will be mostly multiple choice, maybe a little bit of matching to true and false, and you will need a Scantron, green Scantron. For those of you who don't do well on a multiple choice test, the paper is a great way to raise your grade. It counts 25% of the grade, and I've had a lot of students with paper raise your grade. There's one problem with that though. If you don't do it, it can lower your grade drastically. So be sure you, oh yes, I give 6 points. You might think that's not a lot. Yeah, 6 points on your paper, those who turn it in. You divide the 6 points by 4, and that averages out to 2 points on your final average. And guess what? That can, in 1 out of 5 cases, raise your grade by a whole letter. Not ever. I mean, the reason for that is so that all 70 of you won't be turning your papers into me all at once. I'm hoping to scatter your papers out a little bit to where I'll get some of them a week ahead of the others. However, there's one problem. Who knows? Who turns in their paper early for extra credit? Anybody know? People who don't need the extra points. Yeah. What do? Grit my teeth, give them the extra points, and save the rest of you. I'm free on the rest of you. The people who have the A's average anyway and don't need the points, no. All right, I'll give them 106 points if they earn it. I'll also say this, the ones who turn the paper in early, I'm a little bit softer on my grading. If you turn your paper in late, I might read it 2 or 3 times over just to see if I can't find another excuse to take it. Hey, I don't mean to sound mean and ugly, but I am human. Especially, I mean, there was one student who turned his paper in right at the final exam when I'm not supposed to take it. I let him take it. I let him turn it in. But I've never been happy. I mean, he had an 89 average. I've never been happier about giving an 89, a B, than I was in that case. He got 10 points knocked off for turning your paper in late. But I've never been happier. Most of the time I hate it. I mean, it happens every semester. Someone who was 79, 89, and I think, is there some way? Now, I will say, some of the side, I don't fudge up 69s, 79s, and 89. But a 59, oftentimes I'll fudge those up to the next high grade. I mean, 59, if I think you're trying. A little bit. I mean, we are human after all. Hey, there's a story going around. It was going around when I was in school about a student who turned in the same paper in junior high school, and college, and graduate school with the same errors, word for word, the same sentences, and his grade on it ranged anywhere from an A to a D. Yeah, the paper for that. When I give a multiple choice test, the grading is not subjective. The grading is by machine, and that machine doesn't know whether you're white, black, Baptist, Catholic, or whatever. But the paper grading is done by me, and a different professor might give it a totally different grade. But if you turn in a well-written paper, you can expect to get an A on it. All right. Anybody else have any other questions? All right, then. Hold on to your seats. Civilization, as we know it, or history as we know it, begins with the Sumerians. All right. The Sumerians lived in the land of Mesopotamia, in the southern part of Mesopotamia, in the area where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers join. The word Mesopotamia means the land between the rivers. Now, what is so great about the land of Mesopotamia, at least the southern part of it? The answer is absolutely nothing. Why did civilization choose that part of the world to start? There's nothing there except clay. Trees do not grow very well there. Plant life, not a whole lot of rainfall.